that you're worried about because you're flying into a very short airstrip on a mountainside. Whereas at Kathmandu, I was shocked when I realised that it had crashed at Kathmandu, you know, which is a big airport.
When you look at the aviation track record, though, in Nepal, around 24 major crashes since 1992, it suggests there are serious questions there about the regulation of aviation and safety.
Well, I'm sure they don't have the safety record that we have in the UK. I believe it's about 87 since we had a crash here. You know, it is a third world country, but I wouldn't like to put anyone off from going to Nepal. It is a lovely place. The people are really lovely people. It's fantastic trekking there. These people were going to do what they wanted to do. They're going to have a great holiday, a great trek to Everest Base Camp. But I've been aware of quite a few crashes over the years. But usually, as I say, at the other end, I've lost a few friends and acquaintances and Nepalese friends in crashes there, mainly at Lukla in the hills. You know, the cloud comes in and the clouds are full of rocks, which are the mountains at the other end.
Yes, and I assume, though, that this is what you have to do. This is the journey that you have to make if you want to get into the foothills, if you like, of the Himalayas and get to various base camps. Or is there another way in?
Well, you could drive to Roadhead for a sort of a day and a half, perhaps, and then trek for 10 days. So most people cut that, you know, lower bit of the trek, sort of 7 or 10 days off by flying into the foothills, and that's been normal practice since the late 50s, really, off and on. I've only walked in once, possibly twice. Once I can remember that I did the whole walking. I've flown this route, must be scores of times, you know, in and out. As I say, it is an exciting flight. You'd get up in the early hours of the morning in the dark from your hotel in Kathmandu, and you go to the airport and you get on this small plane and you put your earplugs in because there's, you know, 2 turboprops blasting away, and it's flying by the seat of your pants, you know, with another sort of dozen people on something the size of a single-decker bus, and you know, you don't necessarily feel that unsafe, but you are flying by the seat of your pants. It's an exciting ride. You can see the pilots usually as well, so you know what's going on. It's an interesting experience. It's all part of the experience, really.
So do you think most climbers and trekkers, when they're going into the region, they know what this trip is going to be like? And autumn is the beginning of the Himalayan trekking season, I understand. So it's a journey that many, many people are going to be making.
Well, yes, there'll be thousands of people making this journey. This is one of the seasons that's the main trekking seasons, and some climbing as well, but there won't be anyone climbing on Everest, I wouldn't think. There'll be smaller mountains being climbed, but lots of trekkers going in. Literally thousands of trekkers will be going in, and locals as well use these planes. They have airstrips dotted all over Nepal, and scores of these planes flying around, because they say there are no roads to quite a lot of places in Nepal. The only way of getting there quickly is in these light planes, as they're called, these twin-engined turboprops.
So as yet, the cause of the crash unexplained, but you are surprised, just to clarify, you are surprised that it happened at the Kathmandu end?
Well, as soon as I heard there was a crash, you know, I expected it to be at the Lukla end, where as I say, you're flying into the mountains. You've got this tiny airstrip, not much bigger than, you know, an aircraft carrier, a big aircraft carrier really. It's on the side of a mountain. The plane has to stop rather abruptly, otherwise it crashes into the mountainside, and taking off, it has to make sure it takes off rather abruptly, otherwise it drops into the valley. So you do expect the crashes at the other end. That's where they mostly happen. You know, that rarefied atmosphere, there isn't much leeway for the pilot to manoeuvre. You know, the wings haven't got as much lift, whereas at Kathmandu it's a normal-ish sort of airport, really, but I guess bird strikes can happen anywhere, and it's very heavily populated around it as well, so it's amazing. It's come down in a field, actually.
OK, Alan Hinks, thank you very much.
Tributes have been pouring in for the 7 British tourists who are among 19 people killed while travelling to a trekking trip in the Himalayas.
Anthony, Alan Hinks has been visiting the area since 1987, has taken the same plane journey several times, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Alan. We spoke to you yesterday morning, and at that time it was a little less clear quite what had happened, but we know now there's speculation about some kind of incident, possibly with a flight. You've taken off from that airport, possibly on one of these very planes.
Yeah, it could well be that very plane. I've been doing it for about 20 years, that run. So to see the pictures was pretty horrific, pretty, you know, I really feel for the families, in particular, and, you know, even the Nepalese crew. You know, I'm not sure who it is yet. But I have to admit, I've seen them increase in number, the planes. You know, the number of tourists going there, more and more planes are flying to Lukla. And of course, my first thoughts, as I said yesterday, were that the crash was in in Lukla at the other end,
because,
which is,
yeah,
you know, really dangerous landing there, you know, and exciting, sometimes terrifying landing there. I mean, I've had a few close shaves myself, but the Kathmandu end, you don't really expect it.
Well, I suppose people would assume that because of the nature of the terrain that it is a dangerous flying area, but the track record, the safety record there is not good, is it? I mean, there have been a number of accidents in the past.
Yeah, I have been aware of quite a few other accidents. I had a few acquaintances killed, but you see, there's not been any Brits involved, so we've never had any news over here for quite a while. So, to be sure, there's been quite a few accidents. But again, as I say, just mostly at the other end. But really, there should be less accidents, there's no doubt about that. But I wouldn't want to put anyone off going to Nepal. That's a bit of a dichotomy saying that, because it is a lovely place, great people, great place to go trekking. You know, these guys were having the experience of a lifetime, but it's not the safest means of transport, I guess.
The thing is about Nepal, and you're more than familiar than this, is the terrain. So how long would the journey have taken them if they weren't flying anyway? It's almost...
A week at least. You know, you'd have driven to a roadhead, which would have been a day and a half drive, say, and then a 7-day trek to the foothills. So it cuts out at least a week of your trekking, and that lower bit isn't that interesting, I guess you could say, as well. So it's been normal practice since the late 50s to take this flight. It's what people normally do. I have trekked in once, not sure why we did it. Perhaps there was some strike then, we couldn't get an aircraft, I think, some national strike in Nepal, so I did walk in once. I was already acclimatised, so I think I managed to do the walking in 3 days, but that was going pretty fast after climbing a previous mountain.
Yeah. It's unavoidable in a way to ask the question about the possibly this airline itself and the other facilities available there. I mean, there's been an explosion of Everest tourism, hasn't there? The numbers going has increased a lot over the last 10 years or so. I mean, have the infrastructures there been able to cope? Are there issues, do you think, there?
There could be. I am a cynic, I must admit, and I have been thinking that for years with the increase in tourism. You know, the companies have just multiplied. When I first went there was only really Royal Nepal Airlines that did the flights in Twin Otters, and it was really desperate to get a flight. You sometimes had to wait for days to get one of these flights. So now there are many, many different airlines. Sometimes you're flying by helicopters, which are usually sort of second-hand Russian helis. So you wonder, there's certainly many companies now flying this route.
So to people, I mean, you don't know any of the people who are on board, but they were all, we've seen from the tributes, experienced trekkers, as you say, on one of the trips which would have made their lifetime, wouldn't it? Certainly
would. You know, they've got in the early hours of the morning, in the dark, that have transferred to the airport, that have got on the plane, that have been excited. Perhaps they've had some trepidation. Quite often you put earplugs in, you know, you're taking off. It's quite noisy with the twin turboprops. You see the pilot and the co-pilot, so it's sort of hands-on flying in a, you know, what essentially is a small bus with, you know, another sort of dozen or so people on board, and so it's quite an exciting flight, but sadly it's ended in tragedy.
Anna, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. I know you're going to talk to us a little later on.
Thank you. It's at 13 minutes past 8, and as you've been hearing this morning, tributes have been paid to 7 British tourists who are among the 19 people killed on their way to a trekking trip in the Himalayas.
Yes, mountaineer Alan Hinks has been visiting the area since 1987. He's taken the same plane journey as these trekkers did many, many times. Alan, a very good morning to you. The area is dangerous. I mean, the whole of the Himalayas is a dangerous place to be. They were on a small plane, and there have been accidents in the past involving aircraft around that area.
Yeah, they definitely have. I mean, I am aware of the accident record, and you're sort of aware of that you're flying by the seat of your pants in these light planes when you're there as well. And you're aware, particularly at the other end, when you go into land in Lukla, that it's tricky. But, you know, you sort of don't really expect it to happen in Kathmandu, so I think it was a bit of a freak accident in Kathmandu with a bird, I think.
You know, you talk about the sort of area, even in Kathmandu you're taking off, you know, it's high anyway, it's a capital city, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's about 3,000 foot, so that doesn't help for aeroplanes taking off and landing, I guess, But there are a lot of these small planes flying around. I mean, you know, they're flying around every day to airstrips because there are no roads to a lot of the villages and places that you go to in Nepal. So you have to use light planes, well, unless you want to trek for 7 or more days, you know. So a lot of these pilots are fairly experienced, they're doing it all the time. But I guess some people are flagging up, you know, how safe are the aircraft? Are they serviced properly? You know, I mean, I'm not an expert on that, you know, so I wouldn't really like to comment. But there have been a few accidents, and I've had a few close shaves, I must admit, over 20 years of flying there. You know.
Clothes shaved because of technical issues or because of, in your view at least, flying issues?
Well, I suppose you know, it doesn't seem, well, it's not like flying in Britain or in a first world country, you know, we haven't had an accident here for since the late 80s, you know. In Britain, really, really safe generally flying there. You sort of feel that it's a bit, you know,
More
you're flying
risky.
by the seat of your pants, you know, but I don't like to put people off, you know, it's, you know, these guys were going on a great holiday, you know, I know one of them was an instructor as well, and, you know, they were going for a trip of a lifetime to trek to Everest Base Camp, I presume, and, you know, they'd have been excited getting on the plane, you know, you get on this plane, it's very noisy as you take off with the twin turboprops, you know, it's only, you know, a dozen or so people on it, it's like flying in a single-decker bus. So it's a great experience for most people. I'm sure some people have a bit of trepidation. You know, I often put earplugs in when I'm there because of the noise. So it's a completely different flying experience to what you would have in Britain. But I wouldn't like to say it's totally unsafe.
Well, it's interesting reading some of the comments that the family members have said today, and very much along echoing the lines that you're saying, that these are people who are following a passion.
Yeah.
And there is a draw, clearly, to that place because of Everest, the Himalayas itself. Which means that people are prepared to take on those risks. They know there are risks involved, whether it's the air passage or actually the walking or the mountaineering.
That's right. It's not going to put me off going there, and I hope it doesn't put anyone else going there either. But I mean, I do hope, you know, they have a look at the black box and they look and see what's happened to make sure that we can make it as safe as possible. You know, because, you know, my heart does go out to these families. You know, when I see the crash and think how many times I've flown it. You know, to the families of these British trekkers, fellow mountaineers like me, really, and also the Nepalese crew. You know, I'm not sure who the crew was yet, but I do have quite a lot of Nepali friends. So it is just tragic.
Yeah.
It's grim, you know, really.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for talking to
Cheers.
us, Alan. Thanks, Steve.